The snow in New York City does not fall gently. On Christmas Eve, it attacks. It comes down in thick, wet sheets, driven by a wind that feels personal, a wind that finds every gap in your clothing and stabs you with ice. I stood on the corner of 57th and Park, a standard cardboard box clutched in my numb fingers. The box was already softening in the wet, its contents pathetic. One chipped coffee mug that said, "World's okayest accountant," a swingline stapler that always jammed, a plastic snow globe of the skyline, a secret Santa gift from a girl whose name I had already forgotten. My life, or what was left of it, packed up at 4:50 p.m. on the day before Christmas. "We regret to inform you." The email had started. Downsizing, restructuring. The words were sterile. Corporate euphemisms for "you are nothing." I was 28 years old. Around me, the city was a blur of joy I could not touch. Yellow cabs with tiny wreaths on their grills honked in the slush. People hurried past, their arms full of brightly wrapped presents, their faces flushed with warmth and holiday spirit, rushing home to families and hot food. I was a ghost in a threadbare coat, invisible. They stepped around me in my soggy box of failure, their laughter sounding impossibly loud against the wail of the sirens somewhere uptown. My toes had lost feeling about 20 minutes ago. My rent was due in 1 week, and the severance was a joke. It was not even a joke. It was an insult, enough to cover maybe 2 weeks of groceries if I only ate ramen. That was when the car appeared. It did not so much drive as it materialized out of the blizzard, a phantom of polished black steel, a Bentley. It was long and silent and menacing, sucking all the light and sound from the street. It stopped directly in front of me, its engine a low, predatory purr I felt in my chest rather than heard. I froze. Cars like this did not stop for girls like me, not unless they were looking for trouble or had mistaken me for someone else. I clutched my box tighter, ready to turn and melt back into the crowd, ready to choose the freezing sidewalk over whatever this was. Then, the rear passenger window slid down with an expensive, silent hiss. I could not see his face clearly, just the sharp silhouette of a man in the cavernous dark of the back seat. The glow of the dashboard lights caught the edge of a severe jawline. Then he spoke, and the sound cut right through the wind. "Get in, sweetheart." The voice was deep, laced with gravel and the unmistakable, smooth cadence of an Italian-American accent that had been refined by money but had never truly left the old neighborhoods. It was a voice that did not make requests. It gave commands. My blood did not just run cold, it stopped. I knew that voice. I had only heard it a few times, over a year ago, in a glass-walled boardroom 20 floors above the street. I knew the man it belonged to, Lorenzo DeLuca. He was the chief executive officer of the DeLuca Corporation, a sprawling empire of shipping, real estate, and private equity. And for 6 terrifying weeks, I had been part of the audit team assigned to his finances. I remembered him. I remembered him. He was not like the other executives, with their easy smiles and empty suits. He was all stillness and shadow. He sat through our presentations in perfect, unnerving silence, his eyes so dark they looked black, missing nothing. And I remembered the moment I had found it, the discrepancy, a series of charitable donations to an organization that did not seem to exist, millions of dollars, vanishing into thin air. When I had pointed to the line item, my voice shaking just slightly, he had looked right at me. He had not looked angry. He had not looked defensive. He had looked interested. He had looked at me the way a wolf looks at a rabbit that has just stumbled into its den. I had never felt so seen or so terrified in my entire life. I had quit the auditing firm 2 days later, citing personal reasons. And now, here he was, the blizzard, the desperation, the sudden, terrifying appearance of the one man I had actively tried to forget. I should have run. I told my feet to move. Run, Emma, run back to the subway, go home. But the snow was biting harder now, seeping through my worn-out boots. The box in my arms felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I looked at the open window, at the inviting darkness within. It was dangerous, but it was also warm. Fear is a powerful motivator, but so is desperation. So is the bone-deep, humiliating chill of failure. I took one step, then another. I opened the impossibly heavy door and slid onto the leather seat. It was the softest thing I had ever touched. The inside of the car smelled like old money, rich leather, and a faint, clean scent of cologne that was just him. The door closed behind me with a heavy, final thud, sealing out the sound of the city, the wind, and the snow. There was only silence. He did not look at me, and he just tapped on the partition, and the car pulled away from the curb, gliding seamlessly into the frantic holiday traffic. We drove for what felt like an eternity. I stared out the window, watching the city lights smear into watercolor blurs through the snow. I could feel his eyes on me, a heavy, physical weight against the side of my face. I did not dare turn to meet his gaze. I just shivered, my wet coat dripping onto the pristine floor mat. The car stopped, not in front of a building, but inside a sterile, private underground garage. He got out. I scrambled out after him, still clutching my box. He led me to a private elevator, which opened directly into a place that was not an apartment. It was a kingdom. The penthouse was 2 stories of glass and steel, floating 1,000 feet above Manhattan. The floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the storm like a piece of violent art. The furniture was minimal, expensive, and cold. He did not offer me a towel. He did not ask if I was cold. He simply walked across the vast marble floor to a bar that was stocked with enough liquor to tranquilize a small army. My teeth chattered, echoing in the huge, empty room. He shed his cashmere overcoat, revealing a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than my entire year's salary. He was taller than I remembered, more imposing. "You owe me an explanation tonight," he said. His back was still to me. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of fact. He took 2 crystal glasses and a bottle of wine so dark it looked almost purple. He poured. The liquid glugged softly into the glasses. Then he turned. His eyes found mine and held them. They were exactly as I remembered, intense, intelligent, and utterly ruthless. A small, humorless smile touched the corner of his mouth. He picked up one of the glasses and held it out, not as an offering, but as a summons. "Did you think you could hide from me forever, my little accountant?" His words hung in the air, heavy and sharp as the cut crystal in his hand. "My little accountant." He said it like a taunt, like a brand, like he owned the name. And in that moment, standing in his sky-high palace of glass, while my soggy cardboard box dripped onto his priceless marble floor, I realized he did. He had owned me for exactly 1 year, ever since my life had systematically, expertly, and completely fallen apart. It had not always been this way. Before Lorenzo De Luca, I was Emma Rivera. I was the one they put on the difficult accounts, the one who found the decimal point that was 3 places off, saving a client $2 million. I was known for being tough, for being unbreakably, annoyingly precise. I believed in the system. I believed that numbers did not lie. I was, in short, a fool. Then came the De Luca audit. It was the biggest account of my career. The De Luca Corporation was a monolith, publicly. He was a miracle worker, a Lorenzo De Luca, the orphan from the Bronx who built an empire. He donated to hospitals. He funded arts programs. He was the media's favorite polished bootstrap story. But I was an accountant. I did not read press releases. I read ledgers. The first 2 weeks were fine. Standard, clean books, meticulous records, almost too clean. Then I started pulling the threads on his humanitarian investments fund. The numbers were massive, staggering amounts flowing out, but the recipients, they were ghosts. shell corporations in countries that barely had functional governments, a children's health initiative that was registered to a post office box in the Cayman Islands, a disaster relief fund that had zero public footprint. It was not just sloppy, it was art. It was the most sophisticated, deeply layered money laundering operation I had ever seen. He was not just hiding money, he was washing it, rinsing it through the very charity that gave him his golden reputation. Millions and millions of dollars, scrubbed clean by the narrative of his own generosity. I did what I was trained to do. I followed the money, I compiled the report, and I presented it to my managing partner, a man named Steven, whose corner office and six-figure salary depended on keeping clients like Lorenzo DeLuca happy. I remembered the color draining from Steven's face. He had looked at my report like I had handed him a live grenade. He had closed his laptop. He had told me, "Emma, you are seeing ghosts. This is a misunderstanding. You need to bury this. This is the kind of discovery that ends careers." He meant my career. I had looked at him, at his expensive suit and his terrified, complicit eyes, and I understood. I was not being paid to find the truth. I was being paid to find the acceptable truth. This was unacceptable. So I quit. I walked out of that office at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. I did not have another job lined up. I just knew I could not sign my name to that audit. I could not be the person who looked the other way. I still had that much of myself left. I had been naive. I had thought I could just walk away. I learned very quickly that the world of high finance is a very small, very exclusive club, and I had just broken its #1 rule: you do not embarrass the men who run it. My reputation as tough and precise was replaced by a new, whispered one: difficult, not a team player, a liability. The job offers I had been juggling vanished. Recruiters who had been calling me 3 times a week suddenly had their voicemail boxes full. I went to an interview at a mid-level firm. The managing director had loved me. He had been ready to make an offer. The next day, I got a 1-line email. The position has been filled. I went to another and another. After the 6th rejection, I understood. I was not just unemployed. I was blacklisted. My boyfriend, Mark, saw the writing on the wall. And he was an investment banker, ambitious, allergic to failure. My failure, specifically. "Emma, why did you have to pick that fight?" he had asked me one night over a silent, tense dinner. "You should have just let it go. It is not your problem." He had left 3 weeks later. He could not risk being associated with me. His career was just taking off. I was a dead weight. First, I lost the job, then I lost the man, then I lost the apartment. My glossy, overpriced 1-bedroom in Midtown went first. I could not make the $4,000 a month rent. I sold my good jewelry. I sold the designer bags I had saved for. I moved to a 3rd-floor walk-up in Brooklyn. The paint was peeling. The faucet in the kitchen dripped a constant, maddening rhythm, and the radiator sounded like a man was being murdered inside it. But it was what I could afford. Barely. I had swallowed my pride. I took a temp job, not in finance, not even in accounting. It was data entry for a textile importer. It was mind-numbing, soul-crushing work, typing invoices into a system from 1998. The pay was barely above minimum wage, but it paid for my cheap apartment and my instant noodles. That was my life. Emma Rivera, the financial shark, reduced to cataloging bolts of polyester for $13 an hour. Then the emails started. They began 2 weeks ago, always from an encrypted anonymous address. They were never threatening. Not really. They were unsettling. The first one said, "Looking for work is hard, is it not?" The second, a few days later, "Smart girls know when to stay quiet." And the one I had received just last night, "Do not open your mouth about what you saw. Some ledgers are meant to stay closed." I had stared at that email for an hour. The blue light of my cheap laptop illuminating my tiny, cold room. It was not Steven. He was a coward, not a Bond villain. This was something else. This was professional. And as I sat there, a cold, hard certainty settled in my stomach. There was only one person with the power to blacklist me from an entire industry with a single phone call. Only one person who would care enough to track my pathetic little life, to send veiled warnings, to ensure I was so beaten down I would never ever speak. Lorenzo DeLuca. He was either the one holding the gun to my head or he was the one who had been protecting me this whole time in his own twisted, controlling way, keeping me down, keeping me poor, but keeping me alive. I did not know which was worse. And then today, Christmas Eve, even the textile job was gone. My boss, a sad little man named Mr. Henderson, had called me into his sad little office. Downsizing, he had mumbled, his eyes on his desk. Restructuring. The same empty words, the final, pathetic nail in my coffin. Which led me here, standing on the sidewalk, freezing to death, holding a box of my failure, only to be rescued by the very man who had engineered it. A loud, resonant chime from a grandfather clock in the hall snapped me back to the present. It struck 7. I was still standing just inside the door of his penthouse. He had not moved. He was watching me, that unreadable, knowing expression on his face. He had watched me mentally replay the entire destruction of my life, a destruction he had authored. He took a slow step toward me. He was still holding the glass of wine. "Do you regret it, Rivera?" he asked again, his voice softer this time, but no less dangerous. "Regret being so good at your job?" I stared at him, the chill from my wet clothes seeping deep into my bones, a stark contrast to the simmering anger that was starting to thaw me from the inside out. His question was a performance. He knew exactly how good I was. He had built my prison cell by cell because of it. "Regret," I managed, my voice rough, tasting of snow and defeat. "You are asking me if I regret being the only one who did their job." A slow smile spread across his face, but it did not touch his eyes. Those remained cold, assessing, locked on mine. "Good," he said, his voice a low purr. "Regret is a waste of time, integrity. However, that is a rare commodity, and you, Emma Rivera, are overflowing with it. It is why you are standing in my home, holding that ridiculous box." He gestured to the soggy cardboard in my arms. The world's okayest accountant mug was visible, a pathetic joke. "That is not who you are," he stated. It was not a compliment. It was an observation. "I have a proposition for you." He walked, not to me, but to the massive window, staring out at the blizzard that raged 1,000 feet below. He was completely at ease, a king surveying his storm-swept domain. I find myself in need of a financial advisor, a private one, someone who does not exist on any payroll, someone whose only loyalty is to me. I almost laughed. "And you think that person is me, the woman who tried to expose you?" "You are the only person it can be," he said, turning back to me. "You are the only person who has ever been smart enough to find the truth. Now I need you to protect it." He explained it was not an offer. It was a summons. "I want to hire you for 3 months," he said. "Your sole task will be to clean up my reputation. A full, internal audit of my humanitarian fund, the one you were so interested in." "You want me to be your laundress," I said, the words sharp. "You want me to finish the job my old boss was too scared to do. You want me to make your crimes look like charity." "No," he corrected me, his voice dangerously smooth. "I want you to fix what is broken. That fund. It is being threatened. There are discrepancies I did not authorize. Money is moving in ways I do not control. Someone is trying to leverage my legacy against me. Someone is threatening my operations." A cold dread washed over me, deeper than the chill of the snow. "Someone—" "A competitor," he said, the word sterile. "Let us call him a rival in an unregulated market. He believes he can use my charity to destroy me. And he believes the person who first discovered it, you, would be a valuable asset in that endeavor." My breath hitched. The anonymous emails, "Smart girls know when to stay quiet." It was not a threat from Lorenzo. It was a warning. Or perhaps a rival trying to find me. "You are not safe, Rivera," he said. As if reading my mind, he took a step closer. I involuntarily stepped back, my spine hitting the cold wall. "You are smart, you are precise, and right now you are a loose end, a very visible, very unemployed, very vulnerable loose end." He stopped, just out of arm's reach. "So this is my offer. 3 months, you come work for me. You live here, where I can see you. You find the leak. You find what my rival is looking for, and you bury it so deep no one will ever find it again. You make my fund bulletproof." "And in return," I whispered, my throat tight. "In return," he said, "I make 2 phone calls. The blacklist that has ruined your life vanishes. The liability label is erased. By the time your 3 months are done, your career will be waiting for you. You will have your name back. You will have your life back." It was the devil's bargain. It was a deal wrapped in chains. He was offering me the only thing I wanted in the world, and the price was my soul. To save my reputation, I would have to sacrifice my integrity. He wanted to use my honesty to protect his lies. It was a suffocating, perfect trap. "This is not a negotiation, Emma," he said, his voice dropping. "This is control. You want me to be your prisoner so I cannot be your witness." "I want you to be my accountant," he countered, his eyes hard. "And I am offering you the protection that comes with the position out there." He nodded toward the window. "You are prey. In here. You are under my care. Let me keep you." "Let me keep you." The words sounded like a cage door slamming shut. I looked down at the soggy box. I thought of the peeling pain in my Brooklyn apartment. I thought of the sneer on Mark's face when he had left me. I thought of the humiliation of being fired from a data entry job. He had taken everything from me. My job, my love, my home, my future. And now he was offering it all back. On his terms. I could not win from the outside. He had proven that. He had crushed me. But in here, I would be next to the engine. I would see every moving part. If I wanted my honor back, I could not run from him. I had to go through him. I lifted my chin. "I will not go to jail for you, Mr. DeLuca." "You will not have to," he said. "You are here to fix a problem, not create a new one. I protect what is mine. If you are mine, you are protected." I set the wet box down on his marble floor. A small puddle immediately formed around it. I did not care. "Get me the contract," I said. He did not gloat. He did not even smile. He simply walked to a dark wooden desk, opened a drawer, and produced a single, leather-bound folder. He had known. He had known I would say yes, the entire night. From the moment his car stopped, had been a calculated performance. He handed me the folder and a heavy, gold pen. It was a simple employment contract, non-disclosure agreement. The salary printed on the page made my stomach twist. It was more than I had made in 2 years at the audit firm. My hand was shaking, not from cold, but from a terrifying, electric surge of adrenaline. I was making a deal with the man who had ruined me. I was stepping into the fire. I uncapped the pen and signed my name on the last page, Emma Rivera. The ink was black and final. The pen was still in my hand when the sound hit a sharp, unmistakable crack. It was followed immediately by 2 more. Pop, pop, crack! They were not fireworks. They were too fast, too hard, too close. Before my brain could even categorize the sound, Lorenzo moved. He was not a businessman. He was a force of nature, in one single fluid motion. He crossed the 5 feet between us, his arm wrapping around my waist like a steel band. He did not ask. He did not warn. He threw me. We went down behind the massive, solid granite bar. He landed on top of me, his entire body a shield, pressing me into the cold, hard floor. He was impossibly heavy, a solid wall of muscle and fine tailoring. Another volley of shots. Whump! Crack, crack, crack! I screamed as a sound like a thunderclap filled the room. High above us, one of the massive penthouse windows exploded, raining a shower of tempered glass and freezing air onto the marble floor where I had been standing. The storm outside howled. Suddenly, inside the room, I was shaking, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would break. Lorenzo was perfectly still. His breath was steady in my ear. He did not even seem surprised. He seemed, bored. He lifted his head, just enough to look down at me. His face was inches from mine. His eyes were not afraid. They were dark, assessing, and absolutely, terrifyingly alive. He looked at me, trapped beneath him, and a small, cold smile touched his lips. "Welcome to the real world, sweetheart." I stared up at him, the smell of his cologne and the faint metallic scent of gunpowder filling my nose, the expensive suit, the cold penthouse, the contract I had just signed. It all clicked into place, the final, horrifying tumblers of a lock. He was not a businessman. He was not a chief executive officer. He was a boss. And I had just gone to work for him. My life changed in the span of a single gunshot. The echo of the shattered window was still hanging in the air when Lorenzo was off me. He moved with a speed that was not human. He was not even breathing hard. He was just, angry. "Marco." He barked into an intercom I had not even seen. The penthouse door opened, and two men entered. They were huge, dressed in the same severe black suits as Lorenzo. They did not look like security. They looked like undertakers who enjoyed their work. They moved with silent, practiced efficiency. One heading straight for the broken window, the other sweeping the room, his eyes missing nothing. I was still on the floor, shaking so hard my teeth were chattering. The cold from the floor was seeping into my back, and the sound of the wind was a scream. Lorenzo did not offer me a hand. He did not ask if I was all right. He was busy, his back to me, speaking in low, rapid Italian on his phone. His voice was not the smooth, controlled baritone of the boardroom. It was a guttural, violent sound. He finished his call and turned to me. I was still a heap behind his bar. "You are not going back to Brooklyn," he said. It was not a suggestion. I cannot stay here," I stammered, pushing myself up on trembling arms. "You signed the contract," he cut me off, his voice flat. "Your safety is now a line item in my budget. It is a liability I intend to manage. You will stay in the guest suite. Marco." He nodded to the larger of the two men. "We'll be outside your door. You will not leave this apartment without him." It was a prison, a beautiful, glass-walled prison 1,000 feet in the sky. I had traded my peeling paint walk-up for a gilded cage. The next morning, the apartment was silent. The window had been replaced. The shards of glass were gone. There was not a single sign of the violence from the night before, except for the new hollow feeling in my chest. Lorenzo was waiting for me in the glass-walled study. He handed me a laptop, slim and gray and encrypted beyond my comprehension. He gave me a new phone. "This is your office, The laptop has a direct and secure connection to the real ledgers, not the ones your old firm saw. The real ones. Find the leak. Find what Adriano Moretti is looking for." So I went to work. For the first time, I saw the true shape of his empire. It was a masterpiece of financial engineering. The money moved like water, flowing through a dizzying maze of holding companies, offshore accounts, and, at the center of it all, the humanitarian fund. It was exactly what I had suspected, a massive, industrial-scale laundry. He was washing tens of millions of dollars a month. But my job was not to judge. My job was to find the flaw. I found it on day 3. It was not a gushing wound. It was 1,000 paper cuts, small, automated withdrawals. They were coded as administrative fees and siphoned off to an untraceable account. It was brilliant. It was being done by someone who knew the system as well as Lorenzo himself, someone on the inside. But I also found something else, something that did not fit. Amidst all the dirty money, there was one clean channel, a massive 7-figure transfer made on the 1st of every month. It was not washed. It was not hidden. It was clean money, pulled directly from his personal accounts and sent to a single recipient coded as Bronx Urban Redevelopment. It was the one part of the ledger that made no sense. It was honest. I spent 2 days trying to trace it, but the entity was a ghost. That night, I confronted him. He was by the window, drinking his dark wine. The city lights spread out beneath him like a carpet of jewels. "I found the leak," I said, my voice sterile. "It is an internal algorithm, but that is not what I want to ask you about." He turned, one eyebrow raised. "Bronx urban redevelopment," I said. "It is your single biggest charitable expense. It is eating millions, but it is not part of the wash. It is not a shell. What is it?" He was silent for a long time. He just watched me, his eyes searching my face for, something. Annoyance, fear. "Get your coat," he said finally. We did not take the Bentley. We took a black armored sport utility vehicle that looked like it belonged in a war zone. Marco drove. We left the glittering heart of Manhattan and crossed the bridge into the Bronx. The skyscrapers gave way to low-slung apartment blocks, barbed wire, and streets that the snowplows had forgotten. We stopped in front of an old brick building that looked like a condemned Catholic school. The windows were barred, but there was warm light spilling out. "Where are we?" I asked, a new kind of fear creeping in. "My home," he said. We walked inside. The smell of bleach, cheap spaghetti sauce, and warmth hit me instantly. The inside was not a school. It was a dormitory. Dozens of metal-framed beds lined the walls of what used to be a gymnasium. It was clean, it was safe, and it was full of children. Little kids, big kids, teenagers. They were reading, doing homework, playing cards. A white-haired priest in a worn-out sweater looked up as we entered. His face lit up. "Lorenzo, my boy, he said, his voice thick with a Bronx accent. "You came." I stood frozen. Lorenzo DeLuca, the shark, the boss, smiled. It was not his cold, corporate smile. It was a real, small, genuine smile. A tiny girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old, ran up and latched onto his leg, babbling in Spanish. Lorenzo reached down and patted her head, his massive, scarred hand impossibly gentle. "Father Marcus, this is Emma Rivera," Lorenzo said. "She is my new accountant." The priest looked at me with kind, knowing eyes. He was one of ours. Found him sleeping in the boiler room when he was 10. Sharpest, angriest kid I ever met. I looked at Lorenzo, the man who had destroyed my life, the man who wore $1,000 suits and ordered death over the phone. This is the Bronx urban redevelopment," I whispered. "St. Jude's," Father Marcus corrected me gently. "We do not officially exist. We are not licensed by the state. We take the children the system forgets. The runaways, the orphans of addicts, the ones who fall through the cracks. Lorenzo pays for all of it, the heat, the food, the books, the protection." Lorenzo had moved to stare at a crude, colorful drawing of a superhero taped to the wall. His voice was so low, only I could hear it. "The system you believe in so much, Emma, the one with your clean numbers and your rules, it left these children to die. It let them freeze in alleyways. So I built a better system." I finally understood. The laundered money, the criminal empire, it was all a machine. A machine he had built to feed this, to protect this. He was using the power of a demon to do the work of a saint. He was not a monster. He was not a hero. He was something far more complicated and far more dangerous. The drive back to the penthouse was silent. The wall of ice between us had not melted, but it had fractured. We started working late, side by side in the study. The silence was different. It was not empty. It was charged. He was teaching me his world. I was teaching him how to protect it. One night, fueled by coffee at 2 a.m, I asked him, why the children? It is a risk. It is a vulnerability. He stopped typing. He stared out at the dark, sleeping city. "My mother," he said. His voice was flat, dead. "She owed money to a loan shark, a capo in the old neighborhood. The interest was too high. She was a waitress. She missed a payment. She was late by 12 hours. He turned his head and looked at me. The shadows in the room carved his face into a mask of stone. I was 9 years old. I was hiding in the pantry, like she told me to. I watched 2 men beat her to death in our kitchen. They broke her arms first. It was over $200. He held my gaze. I swore that day I would never be weak again, that I would never be the one who could not pay. And I swore I would burn the men who prey on the weak. I would become the monster that keeps the other monsters away. My breath caught in my throat. He was not just a boss. He was a product of the very violence he now controlled. He stood up and walked over to me. It was too close. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I could smell his cologne, the faint scent of wine, the clean, sharp smell of him. "You are the only person who knows both sides. Emma," he murmured. "The ledgers and the children, the monster and the man." My heart was hammering. I wanted to run. I wanted to press my hand against his suit jacket, to feel the heart that was beating inside that chest. This was wrong. He was a killer. He was my captor. And he was the only man who had ever looked at me like I was the only thing in the room. I need to get back to the ledgers," I whispered, pulling my gaze away. I found the traitor a day later. His name was Paolo, a cousin, and he was not just leaking. He was mirroring. He was building a shadow ledger, a perfect copy of Lorenzo's entire operation, ready to hand to his rival. "Adriano Moretti," Lorenzo said, the name a curse. "The East Coast rat. He does not just want my money. He wants my operation. He wants to gut St. Jude's to prove I am weak." "He wants the shadow ledger," I said, my blood running cold. "And he wants me. I am the only one who can verify it is real." Lorenzo looked at his watch. "There is a fundraiser tonight, the Police Benevolent Association. Moretti will be there. He loves to pretend he is a legitimate citizen. We are going, you will wear the blue dress, and you will not leave my side. Not for 1 second." The gala was a sea of black ties and fake smiles. I felt like a painted doll in the sapphire blue dress Lorenzo had provided. His hand was a brand on the small of my back, guiding me, possessing me. I saw him. Adriano Moretti. He was older, with slicked-back silver hair and a smile that never reached his dead, reptilian eyes. He saw Lorenzo, and his smile widened. Then he saw me, and he looked at me. Not like a person, but like a prize he had already won. "I need the powder room," I whispered to Lorenzo, my stomach churning. "Marco will go with you," he said, his eyes never leaving Moretti. Marco, my silent shadow, waited outside the heavy wooden door of the ladies' room. I was splashing cold water on my face, trying to breathe, when the fire alarm blared. Chaos, screams in the hallway, the sound of people running. Before I could even react, the bathroom door slammed open. But it was not Marco. It was 2 men I had never seen. I opened my mouth to scream, but a heavy, gloved hand clamped over my face. I felt a sharp, stinging prick in my neck. I heard Marco shout my name, a sound of pure rage, before the world dissolved into blackness. I woke up tasting bile. My head was throbbing. I was in a cold, dark place, a warehouse. The smell of fish and diesel. I was tied to a metal chair. "Ah, the Sleeping Beauty." A voice slithered out of the darkness. Adriano Moretti stepped into the single shaft of light. He was still in his tuxedo. He circled me like a shark. "You are going to tell me how to unlock the ledger, sweetheart," he said, tapping my cheek with one finger. "You are going to tell me how to drain his heart." "Go to hell," I spat. He slapped me. Hard. My head snapped back, and tears stung my eyes. Wrong answer. And then the warehouse doors did not open. They exploded. A black SUV smashed through the metal roll top, and the world erupted into noise. Gunfire, deafening, men shouting in Italian. It was not a rescue. It was a war. And at the center of it, a blur of black violence, was Lorenzo. He was not the calm chief executive officer. He was the monster from his mother's kitchen. He was not even using a gun. He had a knife, and he was moving with a speed and brutality that was terrifying. Moretti panicked. He grabbed me, pulling me out of the chair and hauling me against his chest. He pressed the cold barrel of a gun to my temple. "Stop, DeLuca," he screamed, "or I will paint the walls with your little accountant." Lorenzo froze. He was breathing hard. He was bleeding. A deep gash was weeping blood down his left arm. He looked insane. "Let her go, Adriano," Lorenzo growled, his voice a death rattle. "Drop your weapon, I kick it over, or she dies. You are weak. Lorenzo, this charity, this woman." Lorenzo dropped his knife. It clattered to the concrete. "Take me! Let her go!" Moretti laughed. "You see, weak?" It was the last mistake he ever made. The moment Moretti's eyes flicked to the knife, Lorenzo moved. He took a bullet. I screamed as it ripped into his shoulder. A spray of red, he did not even flinch. He used the impact to launch himself forward, slamming his full body weight into Moretti, driving him away from me. I fell to the floor, scrambling backward. The fight was short. It was not a fight. It was an execution. It ended with Lorenzo standing over Moretti, who was not moving. Silence, then sirens, close. Lorenzo turned to me. He was a vision from hell, covered in blood, his own and Moretti's. He was swaying, the bullet in his shoulder. He was losing too much blood, and he looked at me, his eyes wild, pained, and utterly, terrifyingly possessive. He stumbled. "Lorenzo." I scrambled to my feet, my legs shaking, and ran to him. I caught him as he sagged, his full weight crashing against me. "You are bleeding," I whispered, horrified, my hands coming away wet and red. You bled for me." He grabbed my face, his grip surprisingly strong. He looked at me. The sirens wailing, the red and blue lights of the police cars flashing through the broken warehouse door. "I would burn the world for you, Emma." I was crying, sobs of terror, of shock, of some new, awful emotion that was tearing me apart. He was a killer. He was my savior. I pulled his face down to mine and I kissed him. It was not gentle. It was not sweet. It was desperate and raw. It was the taste of salt from my tears and iron from his blood. It was gunpowder and adrenaline and a choice I could never take back. The sirens were screaming, and I was kissing a monster who had just ripped the world apart to get me back. The sirens were a promise, a shriek of impending reality. I pulled back from the kiss, the metallic taste of his blood sharp on my tongue. The red and blue lights of the police cars washed over us, painting the concrete in strobes of hellish color. His hand, the one that was not bleeding, was still tight in my hair. He was looking at me. Not at the flashing lights, not at the body of Adriano Moretti, but at me, as if I were the only solid thing in a world that was dissolving. "We have to go," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Lorenzo, they are here." He did not move for a second. He just stared, his dark eyes memorizing my face. Then Marco was there, his massive body blocking the broken doorway. Boss, we have 30 seconds, sir," Marco said. His voice, a low, urgent rumble. "The cleanup team is en route, but the police are coming up the ramp." Lorenzo finally let me go. He swayed, the adrenaline abandoning him, leaving only the wounds. He was bleeding, heavily from the gash on his arm and the fresh bullet wound in his shoulder. I grabbed his good arm, slinging it over my shoulders, taking his weight. I was not his accountant. I was not his prisoner. I was his accomplice. We ran. We did not go to a hospital. We went back to the penthouse. A silent, older man with a medical bag and the eyes of someone who had seen everything was waiting. He did not introduce himself. He just nodded to Lorenzo and got to work. "Hold pressure here," and the doctor ordered me, gesturing to the ragged hole in Lorenzo's shoulder. I pressed my hands down, my palms sinking into the warm, wet stickiness of his blood. I was kneeling on the priceless Persian rug, holding my boss together while a quiet, illicit doctor dug a 9mm slug out of his flesh. Lorenzo sat on the leather sofa, his back rigid. He never made a sound. He just watched me. His dark eyes, clouded with pain, never left my face. He was confined to the penthouse for a week, healing. The world outside raged. The media was screaming about a mafia war in the financial district. Adriano Moretti had vanished. His organization was in chaos. Lorenzo had won. And I was his nurse, his bodyguard, I did not know what I was. I brought him his coffee in the morning. I changed the bandages on his shoulder. And at night, side by side in the glass-walled study, we worked. The line between us, the one drawn in ink on my employment contract, had been washed away in blood. But the why of St. Jude's was not enough. The story of his mother was not enough. I needed to understand the beginning. While he slept, I went back to the encrypted ledgers, not the current ones. I went back 20 years, to the files he thought were buried forever. I was looking for the $200 his mother owed. I found something so much worse. It was not in the numbers. It was in a digitized newspaper clipping, buried in a secure file labeled Legacy. The headline was stark: Don DeLuca dead, police suspect internal power struggle. The date on the article was one day after Lorenzo's 18th birthday. My blood ran cold. I dug deeper, my fingers flying across the keyboard, and I found it. The first transfer, the seed money that had started the Bronx Urban Redevelopment Fund. It was a massive 7-figure sum, and it had been drained from the elder DeLuca's private accounts on the same day he died. I kept digging, my hands shaking. I pulled up the old police reports, the ones Lorenzo had never mentioned. The loan shark who had terrorized his neighborhood, the one who had ordered his mother's murder. It was him, the man in the headline. The monster his mother had owed money to was Don DeLuca, his own father. I walked into the study. It was almost dawn. He was standing by the window, his arm in a black silk sling. He looked pale, but the strength was returning to him, a dangerous energy that filled the room. I found the first donation. I said, my voice was a whisper, but it cut through the silence. He turned slowly. He knew what I had found. You bought St. Jude's with his money, I said. Your father's money. The man who had your mother killed. He did not just have her killed. Emma, Lorenzo said, his voice terrifyingly calm, devoid of all emotion. He was there. He watched. The air left my lungs. He was the loan shark. He was the Don, Lorenzo corrected me, as if that explained everything. The money was not the point. It was the lesson. Respect. Fear. He was making an example of her to show what happened when someone disrespected his rules. So you made an example of him, I whispered. The final, horrific piece clicking into place, the newspaper clipping, the timing. You killed your own father. He did not deny it. He held my gaze, his dark eyes unblinking. He was going to clear out St. Jude's. The old priest, Father Marcus, had been hiding runaways. My father called them pests. He was going to burn the building. With the children inside, he said it was a business expense, cleaning up the neighborhood. I stumbled back, my hand pressed to my mouth. My God, Lorenzo! He gave me a choice. Lorenzo continued, his voice as flat and cold as the grave. Loyalty to the family, or loyalty to the rats. I chose. I looked at this man, a patricide, a savior, a monster who had killed his own blood to save strangers. You can save hundreds of children, I said, the words tearing out of me, a sob of judgment and awe. But you cannot wash that blood off your hands. You cannot wash your own blood. He walked toward me, his good hand coming up to touch my cheek. I flinched, but I did not pull away. The warmth of his skin was a shock against my cold face. I am not looking for forgiveness. Emma, I am not looking for absolution. I stopped looking for that a long time ago. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, a gesture of impossible tenderness. I am looking for one person who sees the man, not just the monster, one person who sees both, and stays. The moment was shattered by Marco's voice, sharp and full of panic, crackling over the intercom. Boss, they are in the lobby, Moretti. He is not dead. He is here. He bypassed security. Lorenzo did not hesitate. He grabbed me, his grip like iron, pulling me toward the reinforced steel door of the study. He's not here for me. He's here for you. Gunfire erupted from the elevator hall. Not a pistol. It was automatic. Heavy. "Marco, the roof!" Lorenzo yelled into the intercom. He shoved me behind the massive, solid oak desk. He pulled a handgun from a locked drawer. His arm was still in a sling. He was injured. He was a target. The study doors did not open. They exploded inward, splintered wood and plaster dust filling the air. It was Moretti. His face was a mask of purple rage, a thick white bandage wrapped around his head where Lorenzo had pistol-whipped him. And he was not alone. He had a team. "You should have died, DeLuca," Moretti screamed, his voice bubbling with hate. Lorenzo fired, one-handed. His aim was true. One of Moretti's men went down, then another. But Moretti was smart. He was using cover. I saw it happen in slow motion, a horrible, silent movie. Moretti rising from behind the sofa, his gun level, his aim steady. He was not aiming at Lorenzo. He was aiming at me. I did not think, I did not plan, I just moved. I threw myself out from behind the desk, screaming his name, putting my body between Lorenzo and the bullet. The sound was a deafening crack. The impact was not pain, it was just fire. A white-hot, unbelievable fire that erupted in my stomach. I looked down. Red, so much red, blossoming across the front of my shirt. I fell back, crashing into Lorenzo. I heard him roar. It was not a human sound. It was the sound of an animal, of a god, of the world ending. I heard 3 more shots, fast, one after another, crack, crack, crack. Then silence. I was on the floor. The world was tilting. Lorenzo was kneeling over me, his good hand, his only hand, pressed down on the hole in my stomach. It was not working. "No, Emma, stay with me. Emma, look at me. Stay with me." "Lorenzo," I choked, tasting copper. "It hurts." "You are all right," he lied, his voice breaking. He was crying. The monster, the kingpin, the patricide, was crying, fat, hot tears splashing onto my face. "I have got you. I have got you." He was yelling into his phone. "Get the doctor. Get him here now." He was applying pressure, but I was so cold, freezing. "Lorenzo," I whispered, my fingers weakly grabbing the front of his shirt. "The children, St. Jude's, Moretti, his men, they will go after them." "I will kill them all," he snarled, his voice a promise of pure carnage. "I will burn their entire family line." "No," I gasped. The effort was immense. "No more blood. Protect them. The right way. Please." He stared at me, my blood covering his hands, his face a mask of complete and utter agony. He saw what I was asking. He saw the price of my life. He looked at me, dying on his marble floor, and his empire crumbled. He made the call, not to Marco, not to his men. "This is Lorenzo DeLuca," he said, his voice stripped bare. "I am at my penthouse. I am turning myself in. Send the Federal Bureau of Investigation and send an ambulance. Now." He hung up. He looked at me. The decision made, the future erased. I am surrendering. I will give them everything. My organization, my accounts, Adriano Moretti, I will give them all of it, in exchange for 2 things. He leaned down, his forehead pressing against mine, his tears mixing with my sweat. "Full immunity and protection for you, and federal protection for St. Jude's Orphanage. They will never be touched again. It is done." I tried to smile. "That is a good deal, boss." The Federal Bureau of Investigation arrived before the ambulance. They swarmed the apartment, their guns drawn, screaming commands. They put Lorenzo in cuffs. He did not resist. He did not even look at them. He just kept his eyes on me as the paramedics finally arrived, strapping me to a gurney. The media went insane. The charity mafia. Kingpin's surrender. They painted him as a hypocrite, a monster who hid behind children. They did not understand. They could not. I recovered. The bullet had missed everything vital by millimeters. My testimony was the centerpiece of the trial. The courtroom was a zoo. The prosecutor was relentless, a sharp-faced man smelling of ambition. Mr. DeLuca is a killer, is he not? Miss Rivera, a racketeer, a money launderer. I stood in the witness box, my hand resting on the scar beneath my suit. I looked at Lorenzo. He was sitting at the defense table, clean-shaven, in a simple gray suit. He looked like a chief executive officer again, but his eyes, dark and haunted, were only on me. "Yes," I said, my voice clear and strong, ringing through the silent room. "He's all of those things." The prosecutor smiled, sensing victory. "So he is a bad man." "He's not a clean man," I said, meeting his gaze. "But the world is not clean. I am alive because of him. There are 300 children in the Bronx who are alive, fed and safe tonight because of him. He used the profits of his crimes to build a fortress for the forgotten, to protect them from the monsters his own father created. He's not a white knight, but he saved people. Sometimes the law and what is right are not the same thing." The verdict was swift. With his confession and my testimony, he was found guilty on all counts. The judge looked at him. "Mr. DeLuca, given your full cooperation and the unusual nature of your charitable activities, this court sentences you to 8 years in a federal prison." 8 years. They led him away in chains. He stopped for 1 second, just one, and looked back at me. I was standing. I did not cry, not then. I cried later that night, alone in the massive empty penthouse that was now, somehow, mine. He had taught me something I had never wanted to learn. He had taught me that justice is not always what is right, and sometimes the only way to save a life is to sacrifice your own. The penthouse was silent. The gunfire, the sirens, the shouting, the gavel, it had all faded, leaving an oppressive, crushing quiet that was louder than any explosion. Lorenzo was gone. The federal marshals had taken him that afternoon. The world, the one I used to believe in, had labeled him a monster and locked him away. I did not stay in the glass tower. I could not sleep in the bed where he had slept, or work at the desk where he had bled. I could not stand by the window that had shattered, or the bar where he had first shielded me with his body. The entire apartment was a ghost, and I was the one haunting it. His lawyers, a team of men so precise and lethal they were like scalpels in suits, had ensured the federal government kept its word. My full immunity was ironclad. The blacklist that had destroyed my old life was erased, as if it had never existed. I was, once again, Emma Rivera, a highly qualified, exceptionally skilled financial analyst with a perfectly clean record. But I could not go back. I could not return to a sterile office at a high-level firm, auditing spreadsheets and pretending the world was made of clean lines and simple arithmetic. Lorenzo had taught me the truth. The world was a brutal, chaotic place, and the only thing that mattered was what you chose to protect. He had protected me. He had protected his children. Now, I would protect his legacy. The St. Jude's Legacy Fund was born from the ashes of his empire. With the federal protection order, the orphanage was untouchable. It was now a legitimate, registered nonprofit organization. And I, with my pristine reputation and my intimate knowledge of its true origins, became its chief financial officer. My life found a new rhythm. It was quiet. Instead of laundering millions, I was now writing grant proposals. Instead of tracking assassins, I was vetting contractors for new classrooms. I sold the penthouse, the cage of glass and memories, and moved into a simple, sensible apartment on the Upper West Side. I was safe. I was successful. I was respectable. And I was utterly, completely alone. I went to the Bronx every week. St. Jude's was not just surviving, it was thriving. Father Marcus, his hair whiter now, his eyes still holding that same ancient wisdom, always had a cup of coffee waiting for me. We never spoke his name. We did not have to. Lorenzo was in every new textbook, every warm radiator, every full scholarship we awarded. The children, most of whom had never even met him, knew him. In the main hall, where the gymnasium used to be, they had tacked up a bulletin board. It was covered in drawings and college acceptance letters, and in the very center was a faded newspaper photograph. It was of Lorenzo, from years ago, stepping out of his Bentley in a perfectly cut suit. He looked like a king. Underneath the picture, A child had written in careful block letters, "Our silent protector." He still was. The letters started 1 month after his sentencing. The first envelope was plain, white, standard issue, no return address. The postmark was from a federal penitentiary in upstate New York. My hands shook so badly I could barely open it. Inside was a single sheet of thin, lined paper. No Dear Emma, no greeting at all. The handwriting was his, sharp, angry, and precise. "Tell Father Marcus the new boiler system he ordered is inefficient. He needs the dual fail-safe model, not the single intake. The contractor is overcharging him by 10% on the copper piping. Check the invoice." There was no signature. I called the contractor. I checked the invoice. Lorenzo was right, to the dollar. They came every month, like clockwork, a single sheet of paper filled with instructions. The girl, Maria, the one who wants to be a doctor. She's left-handed. The pre-med textbooks are all digital. She needs a better laptop, one with a proper stylus, or she will fall behind in anatomy lab. The west wall of the dormitory has a draft. I saw it in the last newsletter photograph. The insulation behind the third-floor window frame is gone. Fix it before winter. The new scholarship applicant, the boy named Thomas, his father is in Adriano Moretti's old crew. Do not trust him. Find a reason to deny the application. He was in a 6-by-8-foot cell, 200 miles away, and he was still running his empire. He was still the silent protector. I never wrote back. There was no way to... I just followed his orders. I fixed the boiler. I bought Maria the laptop. I denied the application. Our silent, secret correspondence continued, written in spreadsheets and purchase orders. The years began to stack up. 1, 2, 3. My life was my work. The fun grew. We opened a second shelter. I was 30, then 32. I did not date. How could I? How could I sit across from some bland, safe man in finance and pretend to care about his stock portfolio? How could I explain that my heart was locked in a federal prison? That I was irrevocably in love with a man who had killed his own father and bled for me in a warehouse? Then, in the 5th year, I saw the news alert, Lorenzo DeLuca, granted parole for exceptional conduct, model prisoner, early release. He was getting out. I drove upstate. It was a cold, gray November morning. I stood across the street from the massive, barbed wire gates of the penitentiary. I waited all day. I watched a stream of visitors and guards come and go. He never walked out the front door. They must have released him from a private exit, shielding him from the world. He was free, and he was gone. The letters stopped. The silence was deafening. For 3 months, there was nothing. No instructions, no warnings, no sharp, familiar handwriting. The connection was cut. I had never felt so untethered. He had survived prison, but he had not survived freedom. He had moved on. He had left me, and his old life, behind. Then, an email appeared in the fund's general inbox. It was forwarded to me by my assistant. It was from a new, anonymous donor. The donation was large, very large. It was routed through a new logistics consulting firm called L. Martin & Associates. Attached to the donation was a memo. It was not from the donor, but from a junior consultant at the firm, a man named L. Martin. The memo was polite, professional, and it was a work of art. It detailed a complete systemic overhaul of our food and medical supply chains. A plan so brilliant and efficient it would save the fund over $30,000 a year. I stared at the screen. L. Martin, Lorenzo. My heart, which I had thought was dormant for 5 years, kicked hard against my ribs. He was out. He was alive. He was working. Under a new name, a new identity. He was hiding in plain sight, and he was still watching, still protecting. I did not respond to the email. I did not try to find L. Martin & Associates. I did not pick up the phone. This was his choice. He was staying in the shadows, giving me my freedom. He was letting me live my clean, safe, respectable life. He was protecting me, even from himself. So I let him. I pretended. I implemented his supply chain proposal. It worked. Perfectly. We continued our silent conversation. This time, our letters were written in spreadsheets and wire transfers. The years passed. The fund became a model of non-profit efficiency, thanks to the brilliant anonymous strategies from my phantom consultant. It was Christmas Eve. 8 years. 8 years to the day since he had pulled me out of the snow, a broken, jobless girl clutching a cardboard box. I was 36 years old. I was respected. I was successful. My life was full. I had just left the holiday party at St. Jude's. The children were happy, buried in gifts, their futures bright. I had done it. I had protected his legacy. I walked through the city. The snow was thick, just like that night, but I was not cold. I was in a warm cashmere coat. I was not a victim. My feet moved, seemingly of their own accord. I was not going home to my sensible apartment. I was walking downtown. I found myself standing on the corner of 57th and Park, staring up at the glass tower, his kingdom, my prison. I had not sold it. I could not. It sat empty, a monument to the week that had shattered my life and rebuilt it. But tonight, something was different. I looked up, 1,000 feet in the sky. There was a light on. Not the cold, blue-white lights of an empty museum. It was a single, warm, golden light. My blood turned to ice, then to fire. I ran. I did not feel the cold. I did not feel the wind. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking. I did not remember the lobby. I did not remember the elevator ride, the ascent into the sky. I stood in front of the penthouse door. The keys were in my hand, but I did not need them. The door was unlocked. It was open, just a few inches. I pushed it open. The apartment was not the sterile, cold place I remembered. The marble floors were covered with thick, warm rugs. A fire was crackling in the massive, modern fireplace. The air smelled of wood smoke and fresh coffee. He was standing by the window. He was not in a suit. He was wearing a simple dark gray sweater and dark jeans. He was thinner than I remembered. There were new lines of silver at his temples. The scars on his forearm, visible below his rolled-up sleeve, were pale and white. He turned slowly, as if he had been waiting. His eyes, they were the same. After 8 years, they were the same. Dark, intense, and utterly consuming. They found mine, and the 8 years of waiting, of silence, of aching loneliness, evaporated as if they had never happened. A small, slow smile touched his lips. It was not his cold, corporate smile. It was not the pained smile of the man in the courtroom. It was new. It was soft. "Get in, sweetheart," he said, his voice a low, familiar rumble that I had heard every day in my memory. "It is cold out there." I stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind me. I did not drop my coat. I did not move. He walked toward me, and for the first time, I did not feel a trace of fear. He stopped, just inches from me. He reached out, his hand gently touching my hair, which was damp from the snow. "This time," he whispered, "there are no more debts." "There are no more debts," he whispered. I did not answer. I just stepped forward, out of the snow, and into the warmth. I dropped my coat to the floor and put my hands on his chest. I felt his heart, steady and strong, beating against my palms. After 8 years of silence, of coded messages and phantom transactions, there was nothing left to say. He kissed me. It was not the desperate, bloody kiss in the warehouse. It was not the memory of a ghost. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was the kiss of a man who had waited an eternity to come home. It was the end of the war. It was the beginning of everything else. We did not stay in New York. The penthouse, with its ghosts and its glass walls, was sold. The St. Jude's Legacy Fund was a powerful, self-sustaining entity now, run by a board of directors so fiercely dedicated they no longer needed me. My work, and Lorenzo's, was done. We left the city. We drove north, past the suburbs, past the small towns, until the highways turned into country roads and the skyscrapers were replaced by mountains. We found a small, forgotten town in Vermont, nestled in a valley that was green in the summer and impossibly white in the winter. We bought a small building on a quiet main street. We painted the front door a deep, welcoming blue, and we opened a coffee shop. We called it Second Chances. Our life was a rhythm of quiet, beautiful mundanity. I was no longer a chief financial officer. He was no longer a boss. I was the woman who knew every customer's name. He was the quiet, intense man who roasted the best coffee beans in the state. He was Lorenzo, and I was Emma. We were the couple who ran the cafe on the corner. We were anonymous. We were free. The monster was still there, of course. I saw it in the efficiency with which he broke down delivery pallets, a violence of motion that was both terrifying and graceful. I saw it in the way his eyes went cold and flat when a rude salesman tried to push me around. And I was still the accountant. I saw it in the perfect razor-thin margins of our business. I saw it in the meticulous way our books were balanced, to the penny, every single night. We were not new people. We were just ourselves. Finally, in a place that let us be, I learned, in that first year of quiet, that the man who had burned down the world was gentle. He was the one who woke up first to make the coffee. He was the one who tended the small, vibrant window boxes of herbs. He was the one who would find me in the kitchen, covered in flour, and just watch me, as if he was still memorizing my face. But I also learned he was a liar. I found the pills about a year in. They were hidden in the back of his sock drawer, in a simple orange bottle with no label, small, white pills. I recognized them from a pharmacy textbook I'd once skimmed. Beta blockers. "What are these, Lorenzo?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. He froze, and he was at the sink, washing dishes. He did not turn around. "They are nothing, a precaution." "A precaution for what?" I pressed. The old fear, the fear of losing him, rising in my throat like bile. He turned slowly, his hands dripping with soap. His face was a mask, the one I had not seen since New York. That night, in the warehouse, the bullet. It did some damage. Moretti's bullet. It nicked the pericardium. It is old scar tissue. It is fine. "You have a heart condition," I whispered, the words like glass in my mouth. "The bullet that was meant for me. It damaged your heart." "It is nothing, Emma," he insisted, his voice hardening, the boss returning. "The doctor, the one who took it out. He said it was fine. It is just scar tissue. I am not weak." He was hiding it. He was hiding it because he was the protector, the strong one. He could not bear to be the one who was vulnerable. He could not bear for me to see him as anything less than the monster who had saved me. I did not push. I could not. I just watched him. I watched him more closely. I saw the way his hand would sometimes drift to his chest after he carried a heavy sack of coffee beans. I saw the faint, bluish tint to his lips when the Vermont winter got too cold. I saw the exhaustion he tried to hide behind his dark, intense eyes. He was dying, slowly, and he was doing it in silence, to protect me from the pain. The years passed. 2, 3. Our life was beautiful. We were happy. And I was living on borrowed time, every day a stolen jewel. It was Christmas Eve, again. Our third Christmas in Vermont, the town was covered in a soft, gentle blanket of snow. Not the angry, violent snow of New York. This snow was peaceful. Our shop was closed. We were hanging a simple, handmade wreath on the front door. Lorenzo was on a small stepladder, a hammer in his hand. "Just a little to the left," I said, my arms crossed, shivering and smiling in the twilight. "I am the one on the ladder, mia cara," he teased. He almost never spoke Italian anymore. When he did, it was a whisper of the man he had been. He reached up to tap the nail one last time, and he stopped. He froze. The hammer slipped from his gloved hand and clattered onto the wooden porch. "Lorenzo." He did not answer. He swayed. "Lorenzo." He looked down at me. His eyes were not intense. They were confused, afraid. "Emma," he whispered, and he fell. I caught him, or I tried. It was a dead weight, We crashed onto the snow-covered porch, a tangle of limbs. He was not breathing. I screamed. I tore his coat open, my fingers numb and clumsy. I put my ear to his chest. Nothing. No beat. Just silence. The heart that had beaten for me, that had bled for me, was still. "No," I roared. "You do not get to do this. You do not get to leave me. You do not get to die." I started chest compressions. The skills I had learned in a mandatory first aid class, the ones I had laughed at. 1, 2, 3, 4. I was counting. I was sobbing. I was breathing into his blue, cold lips. "Come back to me, Lorenzo. Come back." The local ambulance arrived. They were fast, but it felt like a lifetime. They used the paddles once, twice. A faint, thready beat. They got him to the local hospital. It was small. The doctor, a kind man with tired eyes, was blunt. "Miss Rivera, his name is Liam Martin. Your records say I had lied on our town forms. His heart is failing. It is a massive cardiomyopathy, likely from an old, untreated trauma. He needs a specialist, a surgeon, and he needs one now. There is no one here." I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial. I did not call 911. I called the St. Jude's Legacy Fund. I called the new chief financial officer, a brilliant, terrifyingly smart woman who had once been a girl named Maria. "Maria," I choked. I need a doctor, a heart surgeon, the best. I need him now." Maria was silent for 1 second. Then her voice was pure steel. "Where are you? Emma." I told her, "He is dying. Maria, please." "He will not die," she said, her voice a vow. "The best is on his way. A helicopter is leaving New York in 10 minutes. He's one of ours, Emma, the very first." The helicopter landed in the high school football field 2 hours later. A man stepped out, dressed in surgical scrubs under a heavy winter coat. He was young, in his early 30s, with the same intense eyes I had seen so many times before, the eyes of the Bronx. He strode into the emergency room, and he did not look at me. He walked straight to Lorenzo's bed. He read the chart in 3 seconds. "I am Dr. Ari Waz," he said to the local staff, his voice pure authority. "I'm taking this patient. Get him prepped for transport now." I grabbed his arm. "Please," I whispered, can you save him?" He stopped. He turned and looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. His gaze was deep and assessing. "My name is Ari Unknown," he said again, his voice softer. "When I was 10 years old, I was sleeping in a boiler room. A man named Father Marcus found me. A man named Lorenzo DeLuca paid for my food, my clothes, my books. He paid for my college. He paid for my medical school. He is the reason I am a cardiothoracic surgeon. He is the reason I exist." He put his hand on top of mine, a gesture of profound, gentle strength. "You are Emma," he said. "I have been waiting 20 years to meet you, and I have been waiting my entire life to repay this man." He smiled, a quick, brilliant flash. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have to go save my silent protector." The surgery took 8 hours. I sat in a waiting room, not in New York, but in a world-class hospital. I was surrounded by the children Lorenzo had saved. Maria was there. Father Marcus was there. They had all come. Dr. Aris came out as the sun was rising. He was exhausted, but his eyes were bright. "He is stable," he said. "The scar tissue was extensive, but the transplant was a success. He is strong." The anonymous donor for the new cardiac wing, the one who had funded the entire transplant program. It was L. Martin and Associates. It was him. He had funded his own salvation, years in advance. He had saved the boy, so the boy could become a man, so the man could save him. The circle, the cycle of grace. I am writing this in a small, leather-bound journal. It is a few years later. Our coffee shop is quiet. It is winter again, but the sun is shining. Lorenzo is in the corner, reading a newspaper. He has a new scar, a long, clean line down his chest. His heart, a new one, beats strong and steady. He's no longer pale. He is just... "Lorenzo, I look down at the page and write the final words. I was laid off on Christmas. My life was over, and a mafia boss opened his car door and told me to get in. He was a monster and a killer. He was a victim and a savior. He taught me that the world is not black and white, that it is all shades of gray and red. He taught me that sometimes. True grace comes from hands that are stained, because they, more than anyone, know the true cost of redemption. They know the value of a second chance. A bell jingles over the shop door. I look up. A young woman is standing there, dripping rainwater onto the floor mat. She's holding a small, worn-out backpack. She looks cold and tired and utterly lost. "Excuse me," she whispers, her voice shaking. I saw the sign. Are you hiring?" Lorenzo looks up from his paper. His eyes meet mine. He smiles. I turn back to the girl, and I smile, too. "Get in, sweetheart. It is cold out there." Thank you so much for listening to our story. We would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. It really helps. And for more stories like this, please hit that hype button to help us reach more listeners just like you.